This week on Round 2 podcast, I talked with Bennett Maxwell, chairman of Dirty Dough. Dirty Dough is a cookie franchise that is nationwide. I learned so much about the franchise business in general. Bennett and I talked about his entrepreneurship path, as well as how emotions and how we want to feel should be one of the top priorities when making decisions and setting goals. It was a really fun conversation. The time absolutely flew by. We easily could have recorded for another hour if we had had the time. So I hope if you're a cookie connoisseur like me and want to learn more about another cookie that could be in your neighborhood or in your home very easily. I think you can even order online from their website. So hope you enjoy the episode. And as always, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, comment, share, all of the good things. Appreciate you so much and enjoy the conversation. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Round 2 podcast. I am your host, Nikki Corbett, and today I am talking with Bennett Maxwell. He is the chairman of Dirty Dough, and I've got to tell you, when I saw your PR guy's email come through, the second I saw the name of the company, I was like, absolutely yes, because I am a cookie connoisseur. I bake my own cookies. So this was the most exciting email to get. So Bennett, welcome to the Round 2 podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So we got to just talk about cookies. Now, I saw that you acquired the business after a kid started it in their college dorm room or college apartment. So what was it about? Was it more about the business, or was it more about that it was cookies, or was it a combination of two? Are you a cookie monster like me, or what is it?
I'm a cookie monster and maybe just a food monster. So
Okay.
no, I don't think it was the cookies. Yes, I love cookies, of course. But it was more the business opportunity, just seeing, you always have, especially in food, like there's items that are hot and the items that aren't, and cookies have been really hot recently. So it was a good opportunity to get into that space. Now, it was the business side, but probably mainly because of franchising. Not that I knew a ton about it, but I've had friends and acquaintances build really, big, quick nationwide brands through franchising. So I saw like, okay, this is a business that is very franchisable, if that's a word.
And so I think so.
So yeah, that kind of pushed me towards purchasing it. When I purchased it, it was just one location. Everything was done in store. Like you're buying all your raw ingredients, you're mixing, 60 cookies at a time, weighing it by hand, portioning by hand. And that's what all the other cookie companies in the space and like the gourmet cookie category are doing. What I wanted to do was centralize all the production to simplify it for our franchisees. So right now, how it's set up, we have 80 something franchises or locations opened up across 20, 25 states. You could walk into any Dirty Dough, grab a cookie out of the freezer. They're all pre-portioned and stuffed cookies. Put it in the oven and press start. So every cookie cooks at the same time, temperature, fan speed, and the ovens are programmed. So it's super simple. And then once, you're done baking the cookie, now you have a more unique cookie because these were made with specialized machines, all stuffed and multi-layered cookies.
Okay. So is your dough made in a centralized location, or is the dough made at each franchise?
Yeah, it is completely made at a centralized location. So it kind of starts with economies of scale. If you go from buying a 50-pound bag of flour to a truckload, I mean, you're like 30% less. Okay. And then because it's in a centralized facility now, I think the mixture that we have is like 1,200 pounds. So maybe like 4,000 cookies at a time. And then we run it through a machine and it'll come out like, you look at a cookie, it's got a brownie dough on the outside, but when you break it open, it has a chocolate chip dough in the middle with a caramel injection. So that's a 3-layer cookie. So that is already portioned and shipped to the franchisee. So all they're doing is grabbing it out of a box and putting it on a cookie sheet.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that is amazing, first of all. And I can't even imagine what that amount of cookie dough must look like because, I'm just a simple home baker that I'm like, oh, let's make 7 batches of cookies today. And I'm like, wow, that was a lot. So I can only imagine what that's like. So when
it's a lot.
I bet. Oh my God. And so how big is the facility that makes all of the dough?
40,000 square feet, maybe.
Okay.
But it does some other There's quite a bit of capacity still
Okay.
left. I mean, we've sold 450 some odd franchises.
Uh-huh.
So the facility is suited to produce cookies for at least 300 of those. And then we'll
Oh,
either
wow.
expand or
Uh-huh.
get a second facility once we hit that mark.
Okay. So do you ship the dough to each location by, I assume, by volume, right? So is it like a weekly shipment, or how does it?
Yeah. And to make things a little bit easier, we don't ship directly to the franchisees. Cisco is the number
Oh.
one restaurant food provider in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where pretty much everybody's buying all their food from. So what we do
Okay.
is we're selling it to Cisco, and then our franchisees
Oh.
are ordering it from Cisco, which is the same place that they order all of their other toppings, ingredients, and drinks.
Oh,
So it's just
okay.
one place that they could purchase everything from. And then for us,
Okay.
it makes it a lot easier as well because we did start off trying to ship to each franchisee, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just, we're out of Utah, we're shipping to Pennsylvania, down to
Mm-hmm.
Florida, to California, and
Mm-hmm.
you only have a few stores in each state, so you're not really utilizing the capacity of the trucks, and then you're
Yeah.
losing money on that. So anyways,
Yeah.
partnering and going with a third party logistics distributor like Cisco has made it a lot easier. And then, yeah, they'll deliver to the franchisees within a 48-hour notice,
Oh,
1 to 2 times a
perfect.
week, depending on the franchisee.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I have so many questions because I have a background in commercial real estate. I have a background in working in supply chain, and I also like love cookies, and I'm fascinated by franchises. So I feel like we have so many different layers of things we can talk about here. So, okay, you bought the company, and then it was a pretty quick, like you knew from the beginning that this was something you wanted to franchise. So, how did you first put that model together of franchising? So, talk to me a little bit about just the franchise business in general.
Yeah, so this was January of 21 when I and purchased it. And yeah, the intent right from the get-go is franchising. The issue
Mm-hmm.
is you have the franchisor who owns the brand, and then the
Mm-hmm.
franchisees who are buying the license from the franchisor to operate,
Mm-hmm.
a location. Like McDonald's, corporate
Mm-hmm.
is the franchisor, and then the franchise. I didn't know the difference between that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first thing was like I need to bridge this knowledge gap. In order to do that, there's kind of two different approaches. One was just tell any and everybody what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and give me feedback. Who do you know in the space? And I was
Yeah.
able to connect with a lot of really good people. One of them early on was the owner of a brand called Everbowl. They have
Okay.
100 plus locations. It's an acai concept. Hit him
Oh,
up on
okay.
Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff hit me back. We met up, and he gave me all sorts of advice on franchising and
Nice.
what to do and what not to do. Then
Mm-hmm.
I put together a board of advisors, which
Mm-hmm.
was very helpful.
Yeah.
Finding high level people that have been in franchising or in business for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Our second advisor was Steve Hart. He owns Property Management Inc., which is largest property management franchisor in
Okay.
the nation. And then it's like, hey, Steve, how do we answer these questions? Getting a good franchise attorney, I asked, I don't know, a dozen people for recommendations
Yeah.
to really find a good one, because a lot of it depends on your franchise attorney. And then it was also coming up with, well, what is the model that we want to franchise?
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, again, let's go to that centralized production model. But in order to
Yeah.
do that, there was a lot of other steps, getting a warehouse and the machines and the build out and all of that. Once we had everything kind of together, I guess the cherry on top, I was actually trying to find my third advisor. One of my
Mm-hmm.
former employees introduced me to someone named Jill Summer Hayes, and she started a company called Maui Wowie Smoothies and Coffee
Oh,
in
uh-huh.
'83. She was it
Mm-hmm.
was the first ever mobile franchise in the world. She grew it to over 650 franchises in operation before exiting. And I brought
Nice.
her on as CEO right from the get go, because I'm like, this
Okay.
is, yeah, her 40th year in
Yeah.
franchising. She's done this before. There's just so many laws and regulations around franchising. So
Mm-hmm.
ask as many people as you can, get a good board of
Yeah.
advisors that have
Mm-hmm.
the experience. And then I chose a really experienced CEO,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, to get us across that finish line right as we franchised.
Okay. Okay. That's really cool. So then, as you are going into different states, there's got to be different laws in different states about franchises. Is that a true statement? So when you were looking
Yeah.
for franchisees, are you having to make sort of like a proposal, or you have some sort of deck that's state specific for each person?
Yes and no. You register with the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission is the one who's governing the franchise. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have registration states and non-registration states and business opportunity states.
Okay.
Um, Registration states, I think there's 8 of them. It's going to be like the New York and the California and the Oregons, right?
Mm-hmm.
They require an addendum, an additional fee, maybe 15 or 1,500 bucks, 3 grand, something like that, in order to be licensed in those. So you're using the
Uh-huh.
same documentation for all the states, just some states make you add on an addendum. But the
Oh,
presentation
okay.
and the pitch and the sales pitch, it's kind of all the same, depending on where you go. So like right when we franchised, we franchise in all the non-registration states because you don't have to pay anything extra or register, and we
Mm-hmm.
focused on those states. And then as we expanded from there, then we started paying for those other states. I think we're registered in everywhere except for New York. New York is
Mm-hmm.
a funny one. They require
Uh-huh.
3 years of audits or this and that. I'm like, no, we're still a startup. We only opened our first franchise 2 years ago, so I think that's the
Yeah.
only one. But yeah,
Okay.
it's messy. But if you get a good franchise attorney, they'll hold your hand through it all.
Okay, interesting. And then I would imagine though that like the y- as the brand has grown in popularity and gained traction, you probably have had more interest from different franchisees. So do you have like, do people get a radius of, space or cities, towns, whatever that they is there, so if they wanted to open up another one in that same space they could?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 different protections that a franchisor will give their franchisee. One is the radius on like, here's your store. No other store will, no other McDonald's will be within 10 miles of you or 5 miles, whatever that number is. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's also very common doing area development agreements.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to buy 5 in, the county of Salt Lake City, and I have
Mm-hmm.
5 years to develop those, so nobody else is coming in. So you have like a
Got it.
protection on your single location. And then if you are to do an area development, then you also have a radius and a timeline protection around that as well.
Okay, okay, that makes sense because I do have a friend who's in the franchise in the fitness space, and she now has 3 different locations. And I remember her
Yeah.
saying something about a radius one time, and I was like, "Wait, what? What are you talking about?" But now that makes sense because she didn't open them all at once; she opened them one at a time. So
Yeah. So it's kind of, we'll promise, we'll give you 3 years or 5 years to develop this. And we promise that Nikki won't come in and put a gym next door under the same brand.
okay, got it. Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, so when I'm thinking about a big city and thinking like how many does it make sense financially to have locations in a certain area? Because like think about Starbucks for example. Like sometimes you can walk down the street and you're like, okay, there's a Starbucks on this corner and then there's a Starbucks kitty corner. Like how are they both making money?
Yeah. It is, you want more stores to get the brand out there and make it more convenient for your customers, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to cannibalize your sales.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's always a mixture of population versus
Mm-hmm.
density. Because,
Mm-hmm.
if you're in downtown Chicago, you have a few million people within a few miles. You could fit
Yeah.
a little bit more in there. Um, but generally speaking, if there's a what's really cool about franchising is if you are a franchise in California, Indiana, Wisconsin, a few other states, you can go to these states' websites and pull up
Mm-hmm.
everybody's franchise disclosure documents. And
Oh,
in
okay.
there, so I could pull up Subways or Starbucks or whoever and scroll down, and it'll tell me what their radius is and what their
Oh,
population
got it.
is. So it's like
Okay.
there's 100, this city has 100,000 people in
Mm-hmm.
there, so you could put one store in there. That's it.
Okay.
You don't want to
Okay.
go on a super low, I guess, population.
Yeah.
And then if it's more dense, you could narrow that a little bit more. And then you're also taking in account third-party delivery apps. They're
Mm-hmm.
delivering between, sometimes 5 miles in all radiuses. So you also want
Right.
to make sure that you're protecting that, because that's a good 20-30% of the business is
Mm-hmm.
third-party delivery, like Uber Eats, Grubhub,
Mm-hmm.
DoorDash, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's awesome. I like, thank you for the franchise education because now I feel like I understand the whole business model a little bit better than I did. So let's talk about cookies though, because I feel like cookies are a big thing right now. You go into any social media app, you see people, oh, here's this week's cookies and let me try them and rate them. And then I came across a TikTok the other day of this girl who's literally baking cookies out of a studio apartment in LA, and she does drops. She calls them once every Sunday, but it's like, $40 for 4 cookies. And I mean, they look incredible. I think it's called Baked. Does that sound right?
I do know one. There's one out of LA that's called The Last Crumb, and they sell a dozen cookies for $140.
Yes, I have had those.
Amazing packaging and amazing experience, but very expensive.
So expensive. And I heard that they might have upwards of 1 stick of butter in each cookie. And when I heard that, I was like, I have eaten an entire cookie and a half in the same day before. This is not good.
Yeah, they did. They're doing. I tried those ones too, and I thought they were phenomenal cookies.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was talking with a guy who's actually on the podcast that'll be released next week, and we were talking about different goals that we had as we were like little kids. You can be a little kid and be like, I want to be an astronaut. And then you grow up to be like a business owner and you're like, you never think about that before. And I was saying how the one goal that I had from a little girl was that I always said I wanted to make the world's best chocolate chip cookies. And I think that I probably have at least 20 or so people that would vouch that my chocolate chip cookies are outstanding. So I'm always up to try different cookies. And so I feel like I'm rather discerning though, because I know really what I like because I bake them and I've been baking for so long. So I do feel like sometimes cookies are lacking salt. Like I do like a little flaky salt on top of a cookie.
I cannot speak to cookie formulation or any of that. I've honestly never like mixed a batch of dirty dough cookies. I put them in the oven. I'm not the cookie guy though. The way that I view it, and I do think it's beneficial it's not my grandma's recipe or my recipe or, so it is very flexible. There's not an emotion attached to one way or the other.
Sure.
It allows us a lot more, I guess, wiggle room on let's just go out and whatever the taste tests, whatever the majority of the people say,
sure. Yeah.
We'll change our cookie set. But how much salt we put in, I have no idea. I do know that, we have like a salted caramel that we're adding salt on top, but in the inside, I'm going to have to ship you some and then you tell me.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll take that deal. I'll take it. So when you first acquired the company, how many types of cookies were there on the menu?
We had, let me think. I think we had 6 rotating flavors.
Okay.
And 4 permanent ones. So 10. And then we reduced that to 4 and 4. So 4 like main staples that are always there, and then 4 that are rotating every week. So we're at 8 flavors, and then we added a gluten-friendly, and then it kind of rotates between an oatmeal raisin and a gluten-friendly chocolate chip. So 9. Okay.
Nice.
And then from that though, on those 4 rotational bases, each one has roughly 10 flavor profiles built on it. So it's like a stuffed, whatever cookies, like a chocolate peanut butter one. And then you can build so many different things on top of it. And then every quarter or so, we'll release a new base, more like, I think this one is going to be a pumpkin one, that will run for a month or so. Same idea. It'll be a pumpkin base that's stuffed with, I think, cream cheese. And then depending on what you put on top of it, you can mix it around and, get a little bit more variety with the same cookie base.
Okay. So is it the bases that stay consistent and then the toppings maybe will change? Okay. And was that the original idea, the 3-layer cookie?
When I purchased it, there was no 3-layer cookie. It was a customer came into the store and said, "Hey, why is it named? Why do you guys call yourself Dirty Dough?" And the truth is just because Tyler, the guy that I bought it from, him and his wife just thought it was a cool name, and I agree with them. But this employee didn't know that story. I don't think she told the customer. She goes, "Well, Dirty Dough. We call it Dirty Dough because the dough is dirty because we have more mix-ins." And I'm like, "Oh, I like that." I'm like, "How many chocolate chips do we put per batch?" And at the time it was 6 cups of chocolate chips. I'm like, we're going to go up to 9, we're going to immediately increase it by 50%. And then looking at the competitor, you want to stand out and differentiate. The largest competitor in the space is Crumble. And they have typically like a normal, I should say a plain giant flat cookie. And they put a lot of, the frostings and the toppings on the above the cookie. I wanted to go the opposite. When I found, when I heard that, I'm like, Dirty Dough, the dough is dirty. We're going to focus on the inside of the cookie. So
Got it.
We had 2-layer cookies at the time, which is like a blueberry dough wrapped in a lemon dough. So a blueberry
Mm.
lemon cookie.
Uh-huh.
But as I was gravitating on like, how am I going to find a machine that will mass produce and portion a cookie that's a third of a pound?
Yeah.
As I was going out doing that research, I saw a machine that did a mochi ball, if you know what a mochi ball is. And
Yeah.
it was like that rice layer, whatever, the sticky rice stuff on the outside, and then whipped cream, and then a jelly in the middle. So I asked, I was
Okay.
like, well, if you guys can make a 3-layer mochi ball, can you make a 3-layer cookie? They're like, I don't
Uh-huh.
know. Come out and see. So I went out with a bunch of dough and we just tested the machines, and that's where we got the 3-layer cookie. And then it kind of all came
Okay.
full circle when I tied it into the branding of like, okay, what's Dirty Dough going to be outside of just cookies?
Mm-hmm.
And it started with a personal journey of myself trying to figure that out of like, what am I after? And I
Yeah.
landed like my mission statement is finding joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness. And then
Mm-hmm.
now
Okay.
Dirty Dough has adapted that
I like
mission
that.
statement as well. And how do you find joy and fulfillment? To me, it's, your thoughts, your mindset, your mental health, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we need to focus on. So the cookies are supposed to be a representation of life, that it's dirty and messy on the inside, but all the goodness is in the inside.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I love that. That is really cool. I don't think I've come across a food company that is so also just like speaks to how a positive mindset like that and putting goodness out there and understanding that yes, it is going to be chaotic, but it's still there's beauty in all.
And so before you walk in any Dirty Dough store, like on the window, it says, we care about your feelings, kind of fun
Uh-huh.
play on words. And then you walk in, and above the oven, you always see in giant letters, it's the inside that matters most. And then you order a
Okay.
box of cookies, and it says, life gets messy, and that's okay. But it's just, I do believe that society is in this, the hamster wheel of just
Mm-hmm.
whatever I need is just right around the corner. It's my next goal that I achieve.
Right.
Then I'm gonna get
Right.
then I'm gonna feel how I really want to feel. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, probably not. It'll never happen. As far as like, if
Mm-hmm.
you always put your emotional state based off of a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So just try to feel that emotional state today, so that's why the
Mm-hmm.
mission statement is finding joy and fulfillment despite life's dirtiness. For me, it was, don't wait to
Okay.
sell your solar company to find more joy and fulfillment, because that was kind of my personal journey. I'm like, put
Mm-hmm.
everything aside until I achieve my financial goals and I sell my solar company, which I did. The issue
Got
is
it.
I got up to 310 pounds and I didn't have
Uh-huh.
an amazing relationship with friends and family. I kind of put all of that aside. So when I did Dirty
Mm-hmm.
Dough, I'm like, I want to do this differently and make sure that I know what I'm after.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to wait to sell Dirty Dough in order to have the joy and fulfillment.
Got it. I love that. It's funny. I'm glad that you brought that up because one of the things when I was scrolling through your LinkedIn, I saw a video clip, I think from your personal podcast. And you said, writing down how you want to feel when you achieve the goal versus just chasing a goal because you might then get there and not feel that great. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. So I really, really loved that because I think that it is really important to take a look at things from multiple frameworks and say, okay, how do I want to feel when I cross that finish line? And then adjusting your path from there.
Yeah. And I've been on the soapbox of, if your goal is a material goal, I want to sell my business, I want to grow a tax revenue, or I want to do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's, I want to work out every day. Well, you don't
Mm-hmm.
really want to work out every day. You don't really want to
Yeah.
sell your business. You want to
Yeah.
feel a certain way.
Yeah.
It all comes down, like every interaction, everything we do is because we want a certain to achieve a certain emotional state. However, if you look at our goals, typically doesn't include any of that. It's like, if I get, for me, I wanted to be a millionaire before 30 because all your problems go away, right? That's what
Yeah.
I was told.
Yeah.
So like, if I could only achieve that, I could put
Mm-hmm.
everything else aside, and then once I achieve that, then everything's going to be great. But I didn't really like. But how was it going to be great?
Mm-hmm.
I had this kind of half-assed thought process in my mind that I never vetted through, but it was, if I have more money, that equals more time. And if I have
Mm-hmm.
more time freedom, then I'm going to go on more vacations with my family. And it turns
Mm-hmm.
out that when I'm with my family, that's what I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took me, building a solar company, selling it, um, and gaining a ton of weight, and just, to realize like, oh shit, I don't even like, why don't I just be with my family today? I don't need
Yeah.
money to be with my
Yeah.
family. Turns out I live with these guys. So why do I need to sacrifice all of this,
Yeah.
time, energy, and effort when every single day at 4 o'clock I can be with them uninterrupted for 5 hours, like
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. So really embracing more of the living in the moment and setting those emotional goals is kind of the train that I've been on.
I think that's really cool because I laughed internally when you said something about going to the gym, and it's like I was having that conversation with myself this morning when I was there, and I was like, I know you don't want to be here, but you'll feel so good when you leave, and just get through this workout. It doesn't really take that long. Just do it, And then it's like I left, and I was like, yes.
So like
So
I think the gym's a really good example. And this is kind of the first time I'm vetting out the thought, but you go to the gym not because you want to go to the gym, but because you want to feel good and be healthy.
mhm.
If you set the feel good and be healthy goal, and again, that's more emotional because like I'm feeling good, and define that a little bit
Mhm.
more. Maybe you don't have to go to the gym to achieve that. Maybe it's more of the sauna, maybe it's walks, maybe it's bike rides with the family or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's why I think, again, if the goal is just the gym, I think we're falling short because you can go to the gym and maybe still not feel the way that you want to feel. But if it's like, no, I want to
Yeah.
feel high energy, in a good mood, with low irritability, then it's like the gym could be one of those options. But I know that that's not my goal, so it could be
Mhm.
an ice bath, or it could be a
Yeah.
massage or something like that. And it just allows you a little bit more freedom in achieving that emotional state, and it also shows you that there's 1,000 ways to go there. It doesn't have to be the gym. So that way, if you miss the gym,
Right.
it's not like, oh shit. It's like, no, I'll just go on a bike ride with my kids later.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think that it's just, you're right. Cause that ties back to the feeling. I mean, I feel like just being in motion and getting that movement and then having that endorphin release. I know for me that's kind of like what I need. And that helps me, process through anything. I feel like I always say like I do my best thinking when I'm out for a walk because I'm in motion and things are rolling. And it's like, I won't make decisions unless I've had that time to think through it when I'm
Yeah.
out in motion. Because even this morning, I had a decision I needed to make, and I was like, let's go get some movement first before we try to sit and make this final call. So it
Yeah.
definitely
And
helps.
I just listened to something interesting about that. A guy, Eckhart Tolle, a German philosopher, wrote a book called The Power of Now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he talks about shutting off the brain, and the brain is a tool, but it's not everything. Yet most of humanity, most of humans, like we just have thoughts every day, all day. And he
All day.
points to the fact that creativity typically happens, if you've heard of the flow state that
Mm-hmm.
artists or athletes will get into,
Yeah.
that's their mind not having thoughts. And so when
Uh-huh.
you go out on walks and things like that, or exercising, a lot of time it is turning off the active thinking of your brain, which allows the rest of
Mm-hmm.
your brain, the creativity, to come out. And even pointed to like Albert Einstein and some other mathematicians, saying that thought is only a small portion of the decision making process, as I mean, who knows what these mathematicians do in all their creativity and
Right.
finding solutions. But super interesting. It's like if you could turn off your brain, if you actually could turn off your thoughts for a little bit, creativity seems to be better.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's true. I mean, think about the phrase like sleep on it, right? You
Yeah.
go to sleep, you wake up, and you typically feel differently than, I mean, sometimes differently for the worse, but something,
Yeah.
you typically feel differently than when you went to bed. And I think that's like so true because you're knocked out, you wake up and you're kind of like, okay, let me think about this a little differently, or let me see how I feel in the morning. So
Yeah, exactly.
okay. So I had written this down, but you also mentioned that you had gained a bunch of weight with your last company. So you went on a pretty significant fitness journey to get to where you are now.
Yeah. So it was 3 years ago when I sold the solar company.
Hmm.
And that's when I'm only 5'8", so I'm not that tall. 310
Uh-huh.
pounds, I was a little
Okay.
round ball. Um,
Oh.
so the first thing was like, okay, I'm none of the work or anything matters
Hmm.
unless I have health.
Hmm.
The first step that I took was seeing a therapist, which I'd never seen before. I'd never even contemplated it because I was like, well, I don't, I'm not bipolar or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
but I just completely had a mind shift of like, okay, well, I've been telling myself family and fitness are priority, but if I look at
Uh-huh.
my calendar and where I've spent my time, money, and energy in the last
Mm.
few years, it does not
Mm-hmm.
reflect that fitness and family are up there.
Yeah.
So it was kind of setting back, getting a third party, a therapist to help me focus
Mm-hmm.
more on the emotional side of the goal rather than the physical side of the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Once I realized, I was like, okay, well, I'm good at solving problems. In business, can I just focus on my health rather than business and go explore
Yeah.
everything that's out there? So that's what I started doing. I started with a gastric sleeve surgery, which they go in and
Uh-huh.
they cut your stomach and they sew it up at the same time. So your stomach is like four
Ooh.
ounces, which is tiny.
Okay.
No starches
Yeah.
for 6 months. And anyways, that kind of forces your body to eat less and
Uh-huh.
to be more comfortable getting full and actually paying
Okay.
attention to your signals rather than like, oh, I need to finish the plate because I finished the plate. Not,
Sure.
I'm not hungry, but I'm going to finish it. That
I'm
kind
gonna
of
finish it.
gets
Yeah.
out of, it gets that out of there. So I got that surgery done about 2.5 years ago. And that was kind of
Okay.
what jump started me. I probably got down to like 240 on that. And then just doing some other things, more gym, supplementation, peptides.
Mm-hmm.
I got the last, I don't know, 45 pounds off.
Wow. Well, good
But
for
I think
you.
it
I
was
mean,
just a
we're
focus. Like, I'm just going to do it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it certainly takes a lot of focus. I mean, I think that that's sometimes, people sometimes see like the before and afters, and because they weren't living through it with you, like they think like, oh wow, like well that must have been easy, or maybe or he had a trainer or a nutritionist, or there was some sort of surgery, or now with the Ozempic craze, like there's all these things that people are like, oh, like, but it still requires a lot of hard work, a lot of discipline, a lot of making that choice every single day or every single meal to make those right decisions.
And I think that's kind of speaks to the point of like, okay, you see somebody else experience weight loss or whatever goal, and you're like, oh, but they did it because of XYZ. We'll just do
Mm-hmm.
the same XYZ then. Like, if it's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, they did it
Yeah.
because they have a nutritionist, well, go get a nutritionist. And it turns out you could
Mm-hmm.
just download Chat GTP and it'll build you a full meal plan. And you could give
Oh
it
my
feedback and
gosh.
like, oh, I don't like this and I like
Right.
that. But the point is, again, going back, like my problem is being overweight and being unhealthy. And I'm going to attack that like a business. And if it is a business, I am
Mm-hmm.
going to explore a surgery and Ozempic and peptides and a nutritionist and
Yeah.
a trainer. But most people don't do it. They're like, oh, he did all of those other things, and that's why I can't do it. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
no, just do all of those things. Really cast a wide net and see what works. Because after
Yeah.
all,
And
like
see what works.
this is more important than pretty much anything else out there. I mean, one being
Yeah.
healthy and living longer, but also just being high energy in order to
Mm-hmm.
run your business effectively.
Mm-hmm, definitely. I mean, I feel like our health is truly all we have. I mean, you can work yourself to the bone, and then what if you are super unhealthy and you don't live long enough to enjoy it? Then kind of it's like, what's all the point, you know?
I know the
So, well,
Steve
good for
Jobs,
you.
he kind of, yeah, Steve
Yeah.
Jobs had some quotes on his deathbed, on, I
Mm-hmm.
forgot what they were, but it's like he's got all the money and the fame in the world, but unfortunately his health wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. So, talk to me a little bit about your like career path. Were you always a very like entrepreneurial guy? Did you mentioned a solar business? Is I think I saw real estate on your LinkedIn. So, have you always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah. Since I was little, I was selling candy bars, shaved ice, lemonade, snow
Uh-huh.
shovels, lawn aeration, just going door to door in elementary, junior high. Um, I
Nice.
did Cutco knives right after my mission, which
Oh,
was, a
my
sales
mom
job.
bought some Cutco
And
knives. Those are good knives. I think she still
oh
has them
yeah,
and probably bought them in the 80s.
their lifetime warranty, very expensive. But yeah, as far as
Uh-huh.
like an 18-year-old going and selling a $2,000 set of knives, like
Mm-hmm.
that definitely gave me some good sales training. Right
I
after I did
bet.
that, it was only for a few months. I served a
Mm-hmm.
Mormon mission in Tijuana,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico for 2 years. So
Nice.
it's same thing, all sales and communication, but now you have to go
Right.
figure out another language while you're doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
came home and I'm from Utah. Utah is the largest because you have all these Mormons that
Mm-hmm.
serve missions for 2 years and knock on doors to sell people Jesus. You come home and it's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
how about knock doors and sell pest control or satellite or security systems?
Oh,
All the top
okay.
companies are in Provo, Utah, right down the street
Uh-huh.
from BYU. So
Okay.
I came home and that's what I jumped into. It was door to door, straight
Okay.
commissions. Moved to California the first year, liked it, recruited 40 dummies to follow another dummy, me. We all moved to North Carolina for the summer.
Okay.
Did a summer out there. And then I transitioned to satellite security systems and then solar. And I was purposely transitioning different products and companies because I wanted to learn how to be a professional salesperson and be a professional communicator.
Okay.
And my thought behind it is if I know the sales strategy that this company for pest control taught me and this company for direct TV taught me and solar and all of that, it's going to be harder as far as learning and more involved. But it's going to help me achieve my goal, which is a professional communicator. And I think that has definitely been the number one skill set that's transitioned to business. Because like for Dirty Dough, we had to raise money. I've never raised money in the past. But in the last 2 years, we've raised just under $10 million. And it's the same thing that I was doing knocking doors, right? It's just cold knocking emails and things like that. But that sales mentality and being an entrepreneur, if you've ever heard that term, like you're an entrepreneur inside of a business because you recruit, you don't get paid for recruiting. You have to do it all on yourself and, upfront cost to take them to lunch, whatever. Then you have to get them to move to wherever you're moving and train them. And if and only if they make their first sale, then you make a little piece off of that. And then you have to keep them going to actually make decent money. So it's 100% commission based, not just your own sales, but also from a management position. And that led me pretty nicely up into starting a solar company, which it was really a phone call from my older brother and saying like, hey, why are you knocking doors? Why don't you do this online? And I'm like, I don't know how, that's why. And he's like, let's do this together. So maybe after 3 months of selling solar, I teamed up with my brother. We kind of experimented with that. Starting a solar company, we decided to do that. It was pretty short-lived. It was 18 months before we sold it. But the amount of things that I learned during that year and a half and how much of that translated to Dirty Dough is huge.
Okay. So what would you say is like the number one thing that you feel translated over?
I would say the ability, I should say my brother's ability that he taught me. He's very organization, like everything is standard operating procedure. The first activity that we did when we started the business, it came from a book called The E-Myth Revisited. The E and E-Myth stands for the entrepreneur myth. And there's entrepreneurs that say that they own their own business, but really they just own their own job because they get paid last and they work the longest hours. So how do you actually have a business that you're working on rather than in? You're not just your own employee. And in order to do that, it says, imagine what your organization, what your company is going to look like in 3 years. You're going to have a CEO and a COO, and then you're going to have a director of sales or a regional, and then a sales manager and a salesperson and a CFO and a bookkeeper. Anyways, you build out your whole organization chart, and then it's me and my brother. It's like, okay, Brent, what are you doing? What am I doing? And you just put your heads in all of them. And then I'm like, this is so stupid. It's just us. Why are we doing this? But it gives you clarity because like for me, I was in the sales role. So I started off as the salesperson and I built out all of the procedures around what it is to be a salesperson for this company. How many hours do they work? What hours? If they recruit people, what's the overrides on that? What is the incentives for them? How much do they get paid? What are they, you build all of that, write it all down, and then you hire your first salesperson. And then I promoted myself to sales manager. And I do the same thing. Well, how does the manager incentivize the sales reps? How does the manager get incentivized? What are the overrides that the manager receives? Build all that out, and then you go to the sales regional. So I think that was like that activity alone, just I need to work myself out of this business as quickly as possible is a little bit contrary to everything else. Everybody else is like, you have to have your hands in on everything and know every single aspect of every little corner. And it's like, well, if you do that, you just have a job forever. So I think that translated really nicely. And that's why I hired a CEO, like kind of, month one is like, here's the organization structure. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I'm not good at managing people. I am good at sales. So I'm going to stick to that and then hire somebody for the rest.
No, I mean, I think that's brilliant. It's funny as you're talking, so many different things that you're saying. I'm like, I had a conversation about that with so-and-so. I had a conversation about that with so-and-so. Like all these podcast episodes just like start bumping into each other like bumper cars with all these different ways of doing business that all you different entrepreneurs like have in common. It's really, really neat. So speaking of, franchising and selling and getting ready, I saw that you guys have recently received $2 million in funding. So that's on top of the 10 million that you've already raised. And you made a comment that this was like to help prepare for an acquisition later this year.
Yes. So the 2 million is part of that. We received it about a month ago. We just announced it last week though. So
okay.
we brought on a
Congratulations. That's
management group.
awesome.
Thank you. We brought on a management group. It's called Craze. They have 15 portfolio companies, all restaurant space. It was the former CEO of Jimmy John's that started it. We partnered with him. Again, kind of back to the skill set, cold knocking. I'm cold LinkedIn messaging people a year and a half ago. I get connected with him, Greg Majewski. And it wasn't a fit for the investment, but I got him on our advisory board. And then a year into it, it was like, Greg, we're growing way too fast. We opened up 50 stores this year. We went from 7 to 60 basically in a year. Like, what do we do? And he said, let me come do it. He's like, I got a full team. We're ready to go. So we partnered with them. They took a minority stake. And then 9 months later, they've cleaned up most all of my messes. And they're moving to acquire us. It's actually supposed to be done today.
Wow.
It is so stressful.
Big day.
There's like hundreds of freaking paperwork to read through, and you get an email from your attorney saying, give me your feedback on this. I'm like, what do you mean? It's 90 pages. You give me your feedback, dude.
Right.
So
you're like, isn't that why I'm paying you? Wait a minute.
6 p.m. today.
Awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's super
I'm pretty excited about it. And to answer the next question that you haven't asked yet, but I think the acquisition is a stock swap is what it's referred to. So rather than cashing out, you have the parent company that is a lot larger than us, and they say, we'll pay you in stock. So here's the value of your company. We're going to issue X amount of shares. So now I'm still fully invested. It's just going to be in the parent company rather than Dirty Dough. So I'm having a smaller piece, but over, a 15 different restaurant concepts. And then I'm planning on staying on and doing franchise sales and continue to help them grow and raise capital.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations. I mean, what a big day.
Yeah, thank you. I'm holding my breath. This is Monday. Friday morning at 9 a.m. we have a call. We've been working on this for 4 months, and I kid you not, it was everything was falling apart Monday morning.
Oh my gosh.
Are you kidding me? This isn't going to go through. By 6 p.m. it was back on track. So it's at the finish line, everything just, everything goes to hell, and then you just keep pushing and hope it goes through.
Oh my gosh. I'll keep my fingers crossed until 6 o'clock tonight for you.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I always like to ask my guests is, what piece of advice would they give to an aspiring entrepreneur, given everything that you've learned and everything that you've experienced up to date?
Yeah, I'm going to do 2, and I've already mentioned them both on here. But I would say the first one is have your material goal. Don't have your material goal. I want to grow a business, and I want it to be $10 million because if it's a $10 million business, then I can help other people. And I want to help other people. Well, why? What is lacking in your psyche that makes you feel like you're not going to be complete until you help somebody else? That's the real issue, in my opinion. And narrowing that down, it's like, I don't need to, I just want to. That's totally fine. But like, if your goal, whatever business you're getting into, if it's not on I want to achieve this emotional state, I think you're falling short. And on the second side, I think surrounding yourself with really good people and in the form specifically of advisory boards, which there's a board of director that actually votes on decisions. And then you have an advisory board, or you can have an advisory board that is there just to give you advice. They don't make any decisions. So you can go get really high level people if you're good at communicating your vision and sell them on being your advisor. So the first guy that I got, John Richards, he took his company public, InfoSpace. It was a $30+ billion IPO. And it's like, I want you.
Yeah,
so I was able to convince him. We gave him 1.5% of equity. This was before we franchised. So this company's worth nothing. And it's over a 2-year vesting period, meaning if they leave or are fired or released from services, I don't have to give them the full 1%. So protect, or the 1.5%. So you can get these high level people for very little of your company, 0.5% to 1.5%. And then we had the John Richards guy, then we had the property management Inc. guy, and then we had the former Jimmy John's, and it's like that cost us almost nothing. If I was just to pay for consulting, They
Oh
each
my
charge
gosh, right?
several $100s to a few grand per hour, and the amount of time that I
Yeah,
use them, like that's a few $100,000 probably that would have racked up,
for
or
sure.
2%, 2.5% of a company that at the time wasn't worth anything. So building an advisory board and making sure your goal is not material, but it's an emotional state would be my two pieces of advice.
Well, thank you. I love that. And it's also interesting too. I'm going to figure out a way to clip what you just said and put it next to one of my prior guests, Callum Lang. He was on a few weeks ago. He created a program called the Veblen Directors Program, where he basically like teaches people how to position themselves to get on boards of directors. And he talks about like
Cool.
why, as just even an employee of a company, like you have value to be on a board of directors for something. And then he talked directly to entrepreneurs, and he was like, hey, look, even if you're a solopreneur, like you need to get an advisory board. So it's like you are literally living his mantra and showing like why there is so much value in that. So that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you either got to go learn it all yourself, which is fine, and go do it, but there's not always time.
Mm-hmm.
In the
Mm-hmm.
last 2 years from opening the first store, to learn all the operations. And I think we have, at least a dozen corporate stores that we're running, and that has over 100 employees. And then we're a food manufacturing company and logistics. Like it would have taken me 10 years to go learn the ins and outs, or get really
Mm-hmm.
good advisors to give you the advice on hiring the right people to actually be in the weeds and run those aspects of the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's great. I think that the more people that you can surround yourself with who have the experience, who have had those failures, who can say, hey, learn from me here. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have failures. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have bumps in the road, but having somebody who can help guide you. So maybe you don't make as big of a mistake or lose as much money, it's always a good thing. So
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, this has been a really lively conversation and I've enjoyed learning from you. Where can people find Dirty Dough if they want to see if there's a franchise in their area or if they want to investigate being a franchisee themselves?
Yeah. Best way to connect is dirtydough.com as far as finding locations and more information on franchising. For me, I have a website, just my first and last name, bennettmaxwell.com, that has the links to the Dirty Dough, the podcast that I host, which is all about joy and fulfillment and those emotional goals. And then also social media, which I'm typically talking about this, like mental
Uh-huh.
health, parenting, fitness, and entrepreneurship.
Wonderful. Well, Bennett, thank you so much for being here. It was really great talking with you. And thank you everybody for listening and tuning in. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, let us know what you think, and we will see you next week.